Welcome to the Hiding in Plain Sight podcast, where we explore the transformative power of inclusivity and the strength found in vulnerability. I'm your host, Lindsey and with each episode, together we will go on a journey of reconnecting with all parts of ourselves to foster healing and inspire a more inclusive and compassionate world for all. So grab your headphones and settle in for soul-fulfilling discussions that will make you laugh, provoke thought, and be the catalyst for growth. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Hiding in Plain Sight, 1% the Empowered Man. Eric and I are excited for this episode, and we're thinking today we're going to dive into masculine and feminine energy. Welcome back, Eric.
Yes, Lindsey, how are you?
Good. I think this is such an important topic because divine masculine, divine feminine are concepts that are thrown around all the time and we hear about them. And I think it's important for us to explain how that can really show up in people's lives and how men need to pay attention to both of those parts of themselves.
Yeah, I think we always say divine masculine or divine feminine, but I would like to say wounded masculine and wounded feminine. And I realized I had both for a long time. The masculine part of that was wounded in my life was because how I was raised, how I was brought up. Everything was about what I can do and how I can get it done. And sometimes I didn't have boundaries for life or boundaries for myself. And I think I had more power and control over things than I knew I didn't have, right? Because that was the ego of that wounded masculine, and the wounded feminine was, lacking boundaries, not knowing how to say no, not speaking up for myself when I needed to. And then that turned into, once I figured out and fixed one part of me, the other part was even intense or more toxic, right? So when I did set my boundaries, it was more aggressive.
Right. Yeah.
My nose were heavy, and the energy behind it was, a little bit, it was wounded because I didn't know how to integrate the two in a way where it was a beautiful marriage. And I think that's what we're all experiencing in life, men and women, is that we might earn on one side, but the other side is so lacking that when we tap into that, it's not as healthy. So I want us to, dive in the healthy parts of, the divine feminine and the divine masculine and how to reach that within, because it takes work.
Yeah. So the divine masculine, that is, the divine definition is that's when they're in balance. So the masculine role is, the masculine is supposed to be out there, as we know, gathering, bringing things in from an acquisition perspective. They're the protector, the leadership role. But when you have a wounded masculine, it shows up in ways to demonstrate that you need to work on that, right? So like you were saying, the controlling, right? In order for you to operate in your masculine, you're coming from a fear place. So it shows up as controlling, afraid to be vulnerable because you're suppressing your emotions. And those are indicators that you're operating from a wounded masculine place.
Lacking trust, like I was so good at trusting myself, I didn't trust nobody.
Right.
I wouldn't ask for help. And if I saw someone couldn't do it, I was just like, get out the way, I'll do it. Because like you've taken up my time or space. When in actuality, I didn't have patience for myself to learn something. So I wanted to feel like I could get it done without help. And, support, I think support, nurturing, and unconditional love is so important for, all parties of life, men and women. But for me, I realized that's what I needed the most was support and nurturing around life and things. So I wouldn't be so aggressive in that control or not trusting others, because those things, kept me behind in life because of that paradigm I was living from. So, it's important to know when you're in that wounded phase as a man and as a woman. It's important.
Right. And the divine feminine is the softer side, right? Being able to receive the support, receive the love, um, not operating from a hustling place all the time. And I think, I mean, we're all, like you said, men and women operate in an imbalanced fashion most of the time. And it's when we're able to operate from a balanced perspective that you start to heal those wounds, right? And life becomes easier.
Yeah, and it's not only life becomes easier, you start to feel lighter in your vessel.
Yes.
I tell people, I
Yes.
said the masculine is the quarterback, and and the feminine is the receiver. But if you think you're just going to quarterback your entire life and not receive anything, you're not going to score no touchdowns for yourself. You're not going to have no peace in your mind or body when you think you won the game of life because you're off balance. And I think what people don't talk about, that it is a challenge to work those energies within your life because it's so much of awareness, shadow work, and truth that you have to face that you might don't have the capacity to look at. And so
Right.
then we overdo, we overshare, or we overtake, or we over control because these spaces are not healthy in our bodies. So then we're disembodied from it because of fear. Everything comes down to fear,
Totally. And
you
you
know?
end up separating from yourself. So you're trying to do all these things externally in order to build this life you're told by society that you need to build. And it's creating separation from yourself because you're in a constant state of competition. You're suppressing your emotions, not feeling them, and vulnerability is tagged as a weakness, especially for men.
Absolutely. Someone shared something with me this weekend where it was five girls and five guys.
Hmm.
And the young women, they had to be like 24, between 24, I would say 22 to 26, 27 at the oldest. And the guys probably the same. And the girls were challenging the guys, like, what should we ask them? And she was like, let's ask them, when was the last time they cried? And then
Hmm.
one of the guys teared up because he lost his best friend or brother had passed away. And I guess he didn't really grieve that. And his tears came up. And then when it was time to vote someone off, they voted him off. And in the caption of that post, they were talking about primal instincts for men and women, and for women actually to be safe in a relationship, what they go for.
Right.
Um, they didn't see that those tears as strong as protection in their mind. So it's not that it was right or it was wrong. I feel like a lot of it was right and a lot of it was wrong, but also I'll always look at the consciousness of a person when they're making decisions or when they're
Hmm.
doing something. So based on their perspective and paradigm of life, that's what they chose. But in their mind, they felt safe to kick the guy who was crying off the show or off the opportunity that was in front of them. So that's why it's so important as men and women for us to know our true capabilities innately, right? What
Hmm.
is it like to be a man and be masculine? What is it like to be a woman and be feminine? We don't really know. We know what the world tells us, right?
Right.
You know, I
Yeah.
always ask people, I said, how do you know you want to be married if you've never been married? How do you know if you want kids if you never had kids? Who
Hmm.
told you you want to have a lot of money, right? And so I like to challenge these things because it gets to the root of where they come from. It could be family, it can be ancestry, it could be mass media. But I think the main thing in all this, at least in this conversation, is that how do we get to a space from a woman's perspective? How do you think men can get to a space where they integrate the divine feminine, which is more nurturing and more heart centered, and a divine masculine, which is more protecting and providing, but it's more healthy. What do you think needs to happen or change for the collective consciousness of men that you've witnessed or experienced in your lifetime?
Yeah. So that I don't think men are able to do that unless they're willing to start sitting with themselves in the quiet, right?
Mm,
So deliberately carving out time to sit and feel the discomfort, right? And I think that, that example that you shared about, the guy who cried being voted off. I mean, I think that's why so many men are, they're under so many layers of this armor that they've built around themselves, because it is perceived as a weakness, right? Because that guy going first, being vulnerable, what that reflected to everybody who voted him off was, it made them scared, right? They're like, oh, well, if he's going to cry, like, I have all of these repressed emotions, and I can't I can't possibly crack that open, because I think there's a fear, of what's behind that. So I think that it's about it's about finding the space where they feel safe to start digging deep, right? And I think that that is really, I think that's attractive to women. Maybe not all women, but the right woman is going to appreciate that, right?
Yeah, because when I saw that video, I always think about context,
Mhm.
consciousness, and then I was thinking like, okay, cool, like that woman doesn't want a man who appears to be weak, right? Always women.
Mhm.
Great. Now take the guy who's not weak, that you feel in your mind or your body is strong. Now have a tragedy or some type of challenging situation that erupts emotions, and now do the test again and see what would you want. So that's why I said it's always context and situational. But if you haven't lived enough life or been through enough things, you can't really connect to what you think you want if you never experienced it. So I just think you
Yeah.
just got to. I say as humans, we're the full spectrum. Like you got to be able to see your good self and your bad self, your light and your
Mhm.
dark, your tears and your fears. Because
Mhm.
if you don't have fears or you don't share tears, and are you human or like are you not? And look, coming from someone who suppressed most of my emotions most of my life, I'm never in my body. I'm always in my mind, right? I don't want to do that. I want
Yeah.
to cry when I need to cry. I want to express how I feel, even if it makes someone uncomfortable. If I'm coming from a loving
Mhm.
place, I don't want to be this persona that you think I am, because that's going to make you feel safe. And deep down, I'm nowhere near that. Because I think a
Right.
lot of men, we do that because we don't want to lose that person, or we don't want to lose that identity that we live in, or that mask. We want to keep it on because we don't want to lose that connection or that relationship or that attention or that validation or that support. So we mask our personas to fit the paradigm that we're in. And it doesn't feel good, because then at the end of the day, you're like, why am I doing all this for? Because you
Right.
want love. That's it. That's all
Yeah.
it is. And
Mhm.
men do not feel love for being who they really are.
Right.
You don't feel love being in your soft space as a man. That's not. I can't say all men feel that way, but if you go and did a survey, if you ask out, do you feel love when you cry? They're gonna be like, no. They're like, I don't even cry, right? Because it's
Mhm.
not common for you to get support when you're in vulnerability or weak. At least for a man, in my life, or people don't know how to support you, because that's what I've realized. Like, okay, I can share my truth, I can be vulnerable, I can cry, I can be emotional, but I mean, maybe you can help me. But I know in my past, when I share my truth, they don't know how to help me. They're like, "Whoa, that's a lot, man." Ooh. So I'm like, "See, this is why I don't say anything."
Well, I think that that's indicator number 1, though, is like you're not surrounded by the right people, right? So like step 1 is looking around at your community. And if that
Yeah,
community is not full of people who are able to receive and help you through these emotions and big feelings you need to process, then you need to create your own support system, right? I think that's step
yeah,
1, because I think there's a lack of appreciation, when you're looking at people like you, Eric, who've done the work, who have been in the public eye, who follow you on Instagram. There's people out there being like, "Oh, well, this was easy for this guy. Look at all the people that he surrounded himself
yeah.
with." But the reality is it wasn't easy for you, and
It's
you
not.
put one foot in front of the other and you figured it out, right?
And I'm still figuring it out because as you
Right.
grow spiritually and you have more influence or affluence, there's more challenges and changes that you can't really prepare for. You have to just, it's kind of like when we had these LA fires. It's like you have to really just sit in it and learn from it or grow
Mhm.
through it instead of like trying to figure it out, because you can't figure something out you never experienced. You got to let it, the experience be the figuring out, right? But
Yeah.
it's always a catch to what people think they want, and then realize,
Mhm.
like I tell people, it takes a lot to be me energetically. Um,
Mhm.
I do a lot of spiritual work, a lot of praying, a lot of meditation, breath work, working out. And granted, like I chose this life, right, in this lifetime, but it doesn't mean because I make it look easy, it's not heavy, right? So that's why I
Yeah.
always tell, like, as us as men, we provide so much, but no one knows the detail that comes with that. And honestly, no one really cares. Like, that's the truth. Like,
Yeah.
no one really cares. Even if you tell somebody, like, man, that's tough, man. You'll be all right. God bless.
Yeah.
So I always had that notion of, it's kind of like a woman. A woman doesn't want a man to fix her problems when she's emotional. She just wants him to listen. That's it. If he has a
Yeah.
solution that can help, great. But if you could just listen with no resistance and not always try to be a solution to what she's going through, she'll find a solution by you just listening. And I think as men, we just want to be heard and felt when we go through our pain, but we don't feel safe expressing our pain or fears to our women or to people in general because we don't want to be judged. So we rather just not
Right.
say and keep it tucked in. But look, clearly, you can feel when a man is going through something. I know I can. So
Mhm.
I think we just got to grow into this space of like having safe containers and conversations around like our emotions, our feelings, what will empower us to feel safe when we speak in our truth, and what will give us confidence to speak our truth, knowing that no matter what the outcome is, we feel better about it because we're honoring our true feelings, we're honoring our authenticity,
Mhm.
and we're not running from it because of fear. So,
Right. And it's about learning to be, I mean, I think a good place to start is acknowledging the feelings as they come up and imagining yourself as a child, right? That's
right.
that 6-year-old you who's having these big feelings, and that 6-year-old version of you who would want to cry and feel the feelings. You need to be that support system for them that you didn't have, right? Because that's where the woundedness comes
Or, but I
from.
mean, but or be honest, some people at 6 didn't cry, so they don't even know what that feels like in their body.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
get what I mean?
yeah.
So they don't even have no real experience of crying at the young age of 6 or 7 because they never did. So now that 35, 40, 45, it feels so weird to like, cause I've never did this.
I know. Yeah.
So by the way, can we pause for 1 second?
Sure,
Sorry.
no problem.
So I want to give you an example of how men operate. Like, you see how I just did that?
Mhm.
Let me just see how I just pause and see if I can go. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Some men don't know how to do that in relationships with women they love because they don't want to upset them, right?
Right.
Like, let's say, Vince is like, oh, I know you like LA Dodgers, and I know I said 2 weeks ago we could go, and then I know I don't have the capacity to go, but I'll still find a way instead of telling you like I can't go. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the
So
fear of judgment, the
there you
fear
go.
of being rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're not showing up authentically. And that's, I think, where the problem, that's where it comes to a head in relationships, right? It's like you can only play this role for so long, and you're not being fair to yourself or your partner because neither of you really are showing up from an authentic
Hmm.
place.
Yeah. Because of fear.
Hmm. Fear. Yeah. So, what are some tools that you did? I mean, for me, I know that I realized that I resided way too much in my masculine energy, right? And that was the imbalance that I experienced in my life. It was stress, it was like my body wasn't well, it impacted my mental health. And now I'm able to understand when I'm operating too much in one versus the other, right? But it took a
Right.
long time to get there. And a lot of that work was like the inner child, the shadow work, understanding when I was operating from those places from a wounded perspective.
hmm Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned in my life, you experience burnout.
I
Really,
know.
the burnout
Burnout's
comes.
real.
You get, because when you burn out, it's not because it's too much work. Your emotional needs are not being met. So
Yes.
you burn out and you just keep hitting these walls, and you realize like you can't do this anymore. Like I need to rest. I need to slow down. I need to
Mm-hmm.
listen to what's coming up, whether it's good or bad, and trust it and own how I feel instead of overly sharing or overly giving or overly doing, because that's the perception or paradigm I think I should live from as a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
As this masculine man, I gotta do all these things, and then you burn out. Now what? And
Right.
then the interesting thing, when you burn out, the people you're helping and supporting, like, oh, you'll be fine. Just get some rest.
I know.
Well,
Because
you
they
could
don't
have
get
got
it
rest
because
like
they're
weeks
also
ago,
wounded.
right? Right.
That's why. Yeah.
So what's the
Yeah.
term they always say? Don't never let them see you sweat. Uh, but they say men don't cry, boys do, or you strong. Come on, tough times don't last. Tough people do. Like all these things, only the strong survive. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but is that being human when you have a real emotion or you're dealing with grief or loss? You can't be strong for so long. You're going to crack. You're going to break. And I think the biggest thing we can do is the first is acceptance. Accept where you are and acknowledge what that is in your mind, in your life, and in your body. I think kind of move to some more healthy ways of dealing with stress, being vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
speaking your truth, and allowing yourself to get connected to your higher power, getting connected to God, and getting connected to your heart again.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it's not easy, but it's a process.
yeah, and I think that um a clear indicator that you're operating from an imbalanced place is you're experiencing burnout. But the reality is, if you're paying attention to your emotional needs, you will not rely upon or look for energy or boosts from substance reliance or external things, right? You're not over drinking. I mean, if you're doing these things just to get through the day, drinking too much coffee, relying on
Mhm.
drugs or alcohol, um, not eating well, over exercising, like those are all things that are telling you that something's off and you need to pay attention, or else your body will just totally give out on you.
Yeah. And it's a clear indication because I've been so good at doing the healthy things a
Mm-hmm.
lot, right? Working out, eating
Mm-hmm.
clean, reading books,
Yeah.
meditating. Sometimes even the good stuff can be bad for you because you're not allowing
Yes.
yourself to have a human experience because you're so much in spiritual bypass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're
Yep.
not allowing yourself to feel. You're not allowing yourself to enjoy the fruits of your labor. You're not allowing yourself to have, I won't even say a cheat meal, just to have fun because you're
Yeah.
so enwrapped in, oh, I'm being consistent, I'm being disciplined. It's like, yeah, but when people win championships, they pop champagne and they go celebrate.
Right.
Right?
It's about balance.
Yeah. So it's not like you
Yeah.
just, living like a robot until you get the reward and then you go back to working
Mm-hmm.
like a robot. Like that's not real life. So that's what
Yeah.
I had to learn, and that's where the burnout came because I was so ignorant to the truth of I need to rest and not work for maybe 3 weeks because I work so much.
Yep.
And because if it's fear there, I don't feel like I have to work. And guess what's going to happen? I'm going to feel like I always have to work because that's a paradigm, that's a belief system that I believe, and then that's what I got to continue to live. Instead of having faith, the feminine side, and allowing,
Mm-hmm.
trusting, and having a receivership come in and be 10 more than what you're getting now because you allow yourself to be free of the restraints of always doing to get instead of just being and allowing to have.
Right. And I think that, I mean, this is something that I still struggle with. I always will. But I think one of the really important skills that everybody needs to learn is flexibility. Being able to be flexible in their routines and what they think they need, because not every day is going to be the same for you, right? And I think that a lot of us operate from an all or nothing approach. Like, I have to work out 6 days a week, or what's the point? But being able to carve in those important things that make you feel good, that you enjoy doing, while being flexible, um, and paying attention to what your body needs, right? And emotional support.
And what your mind needs, your mind needs
Yeah.
to feel safe and relaxed within your
Mm-hmm.
body.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing for the empowered man is to allow himself, I can't say be a kid again, but allow himself to go into his inner child and experience what that feels like to be happy, to be joyous, to be sad, to be upset, to be angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then get to a root of like, okay, where in my life am I not expressing my true authenticity? And where in my life am I putting up a front because I don't want to be judged? And where in my
Oh yeah.
life do I have so much fear that I just suppress it and cover it up with other things?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always to ask ourselves empowering questions to get the right answers, and not why me, why did this? But I just think questions lead to answers. And if we ask the right questions in the right mind frame, we can get to the root of the answer we need and not the answer we think we want. Like, oh, I'm just feeling that because I'm tired. Oh, I'm just feeling that because, this is like be a man. It's like, yeah, I get that, but what is the truth of that? It's
Yeah.
fear, it's lack and limitation, it's because I was telling a client yesterday that some men, when they open up their heart, to fully open up your heart,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like part of it has to break
Yeah.
to recalibrate, to recharge, to actually receive the full capacity of the love you want. Because if you're
Absolutely.
just, in that space and you're half in it and not all of it, like a part of you has to break to kind of like heal that other side, the wounded side, to kind of clear it again. So, it
And
takes
it
work, it takes time.
and not just the heart. Like, I don't know about you, Eric, but how many times in your life have you dismantled the version of you that you thought was like the healed version, so that you could up level again, right? It's about being
Yeah.
being prepared to let go of the things that aren't serving you, to dismantle the belief systems you had about yourself, so that you can rebuild a healthier, more balanced version.
Yeah, it's been years, it's been
Mhm.
moments, because I'm constantly growing and evolving to be my best
Mhm.
self, but it doesn't mean it's easy just because it might
No.
seem that way. And I think what I've learned in my journey is that not to judge myself when I make mistakes, not to judge myself or beat myself up because I got it wrong or
Mhm.
I didn't really fulfill the goal the way I needed to or wanted to, and have grace and compassion for myself, because it's so easy for me to be hard on myself when I don't win or achieve or do the
Mhm.
thing I want. And it's frustrating, to be honest. It's very frustrating. But I
Yeah.
think you got to allow that side, that shadow frequency to come through you, to be aware and acknowledge that and not suppress it, to get to the actual victory and the change and evolvement that you want,
Yeah.
instead of judging it and being upset. Right? It's like I can miss a free throw, but I'm not going to beat myself up. It's not the end of the game. But
Mhm.
sometimes we get so into that phase that we block other things from happening because we're not accepting it with love. We're accepting it with pain, right? And judgment.
Mhm.
So it pushes
Judgment.
us
Yeah.
down into that phase.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right, asking the questions to really get behind the feelings that are coming up for you, I think, is so important, because often they present differently than what your body's actually telling you. Like this week, for example, working with my mentor, I was flooded with anxiety about something. So I was unpacking with her. I was like, I don't know, I'm feeling this like real intense anxiety in my chest. We talked through it, and she's like, is it possible that this anxiety you're feeling is actually excitement? like
Mm.
anticipatory about this next thing. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what it is. But my muscle memory of that like overwhelming feeling in my chest was always anxiety because I lived in it so long. But it's going deeper beneath that surface level.
Yeah, and this is also acknowledging that I think sometimes we glorify the victories, the wins, and positivity, and I think we don't have a good relationship with negativity or pain. We judge it
Mm-hmm.
so much. It's like we think it's the worst thing in the world, and actually, it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like, like these LA fires is hard and it's harsh, but I think it's going to make this town 10 times better emotionally, mentally, vibrationally. So people listening,
Yeah.
especially men, don't judge yourself for the pain you're in. The pain you're in is actually great, or it's going to be great once you
Yeah.
get through it, because you're going to gain so much perspective, you're going to get so much wisdom, you're going to have so much
Mm-hmm.
substance, and you're going to be able to help another young man or friend out that might go through the same thing years later or months later. So
Mm.
nothing is ever as bad as we make it, but because of
No.
our judgment and attitude towards it, it can become worse. So,
Mm-hmm.
even me, I get in that space like, oh my God, like it's the end of the world. It's like, man, it's okay. It's just a moment, man. Relax.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm preaching and encouraging all men to love themselves unconditionally and be curious about who you are. Be curious about your
Yeah.
family. Be curious about the DNA and the lineage that you come from. Be curious
Mm-hmm.
about your childhood and your mom and dad. What did they grow through or go through? Like, have these uncomfortable conversations, because it'll give you more awareness of what's coming through your vessel as you live life. And it's not all you, it's ancestry things that come up that controls us, or that gives
Mm-hmm.
us anxiety or give us fear around going to the next level, or self-sabotage, or money, love. It's all,
Mm-hmm.
it's in our DNA, but it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. But if we don't have the information and awareness, we can't really change it.
Right. And that's the job, right? Is to
Yeah.
really, really get to know yourself so that you can do the learning, do the healing, and then show up to help other people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the main thing. And for me, I want to be embodied in all this that we talk about: heart math, masculine and
Mm-hmm.
feminine. I want to be embodied in it, not in a perfect way, but in a authentic way where I can share from experience and not share from having knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
it's so easy to speak on something versus something you actually experience. It's a different frequency behind the
Yes.
experience versus the knowledge. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is a perfect place to end this topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What do
yeah.
you think? I feel
Yes,
like that was a mic drop. Yeah.
divine masculine and divine feminine,
Yeah.
fellas, everyone listening.
Yeah.
Let's be empowered in our authenticity. Let's be empowered in our trust and intuition. And let's be empowered in our femininity and our masculinity. Like, no man
Mm-hmm.
wants to be masculine all day. Like, you want some love, man. you wanna you wanna hug your woman or hug your partner, and you wanna feel good. You don't want to be
Yeah.
Superman all day. At the end of the day, I want to take my Superman cape off. I want my woman to say, "Hey, you put that down. Come over, lay down, and relax."
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
feels good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, equilibrium. We need balance. So, 1% of the empowered man is worth the work. Is worth a listen, and is worth you paying attention to the things you or we as a culture have ignored over years to understand the reality that we all are experiencing through the masculine and the feminine. So,
Yeah. And I think it's a good reminder as well that once you start doing this work, all of the people and the tools that you need to keep advancing will show up in your life, right?
yeah,
Initially it can be a really lonely journey, but once you are able, you start to recalibrate and you start vibrating at a different energy, things shift around you and you don't have control over your partner or other people in your life. All you have control over is how you are going to go on this healing journey. And then it's really magical because when you start to see how everything shifts around you once you start taking
yeah.
care of yourself. Yeah.
Awareness is key. The
Yeah.
details of life changes life.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Until next time, guys. DM us. We really would love to incorporate questions and topics and have an ongoing conversation.
Subscribe to the podcast,
That's
build
right.
rapport with our discussions, and be curious, even challenge some of
Mm-hmm.
our perspectives. I'm curious to have feedback, and eventually we can have a Q&A. We can have a panel
That's
about this,
right.
right? We
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
pop-up panel
Yeah.
somewhere. So
Yeah.
this is good. Lindsey, thank you for your time and your energy. And in plain sight, here we
Thank you.
are, number one,
That's right.
1% of empowered man.
Yeah. Thank you, my
Love.
friend.
Yes. Peace.
Thank you for joining me on the Hiding in Plain Sight podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review. Feedback and episode ideas helps us reach more listeners. I would love to connect with you further. You can visit my website at lindseymaza.com and add me on Instagram at lindseymaza. Until next time, keep sharing your stories and vulnerabilities because one story at a time connects us all.